I hope you have the handouts with you. This was actually uploaded last week. So for this week, we haven't uploaded any new one. This is the version that I have uploaded last week. So we are basically using this set of handouts today for our discussion. Now, up to last week, we have been talking about money, which is the key component, one of the key components of the financial system. Or basically, that's the basis of the financial system for financial transactions. So we discuss various aspects related to money, their definitions, different aggregates, and all that. Now today we are going to link money with its policy. Any variable or any economic indicator has related policies. For example, let's say the government budget deficit or revenue, all these things are related to government fiscal policy. National accounts, all these things, employment, they are related to income policy. Likewise, money is related to monetary policy. So we are going to discuss money and monetary policy today, which is one of the important macroeconomic policies of an economy. So we will see in this session why money is important for policy purposes. Policy means a kind of a framework that will give you some direction related to certain sector or the broader economy. So we are linking money with these policy purposes today. To start with, sorry. Now we talked about money last week, and we saw the central banks and the banking system, they are injecting money to the system, economy. And that money we have calculated their expansion rate of growth, and we have seen money is expanding every year depending on the transactions of the economy. So when people demand money in the economy for their transactions, the banking system, the central bank and the banks, they are providing this money in terms of currency and coin notes, or notes and coins, which means currency, or in terms of bank money, which are basically deposits. So in that way, we release money to the system. Now we can ask a question in terms of this monetary expansion or release of money. One can ask how much money is needed by the economy. So that's the question. So we know money is issued by these banking institutions, the central bank and banks. And do they issue money in excess amounts or in with a shortage? Or do they issue the right amount needed by the economy? So those are some questions that we have in front of us. In economics, we agree that we should have enough money, adequate money in the economy, which means we should have money that is helpful for us to do our transactions, to make our purchases. For that matter, we need money. And that money is measured in terms of various monetary aggregates, as we have seen. And depending on those monetary aggregates, we can see how much money in terms of which definition is available in the economy. So here we are basically looking at not the reserve money, the central bank money component, or not only the bank money, which means deposits. We are basically talking about the total money supply in the economy. So here, when I say money, this indicates total money supply or the broad money. Now, money and its expansion is important in an economy because, as I said, these are related to some policies. So before we talk about these policies, we need to know, as I said, how much money is needed by the economy. And as I told you, we only need adequate amount of money. Now, what will happen if there are excessive money in the economy? Excessive means more than the requirement of the economy. Now, as I said, the economy would need a certain amount of money. And if there is money more than that amount, we can say that money is basically in excess, excessive. Now, in the economy, we don't prefer excessive money. We would like to have, as general public, as layman, we would like to have more money, because when we have more money, we think we can make more purchases. We think we are more richer than the previous period when you have more money. But for economists or for central bankers, more money is not preferred, because more money is problematic. More money creates some problem. What is that problem? Excessive money or more money creates inflation in the economy. How it happens? How it creates inflation in the economy? If you look at this diagram, right on the right hand side, if you start from this point, the green box, we already know money is circulating at a constant speed, which means velocity is constant, v. We already know. So when v is constant, if you put more money to the system, what will happen? Now people will have more money in their pockets. Think about you. When you have more money with you, you will have more money in your pockets, which means you wish to buy more goods and services. So as a result of increased income, now you demand more. What is the result? In the short run, even though you demand more, even though you want to buy more services and goods, in the short run, the economy cannot supply or produce that demand. Overnight, you can't do it. Overnight, you can double the demand, right? Overnight, if I give you double the amount of money you have, you will double your demand overnight, which means in a shorter period. But you cannot increase the production in that way. So production is basically limited. So what will happen? In that case, too much money now chasing too few goods. You have X amount of production, that production cannot be expanded in the short run, and Y amount of money, which is bigger than the X, is following or chasing that amount of goods. So now the demand is rising, the supply is constant, means prices will increase. So which means the prices of this production of these goods and services will increase, because more money is chasing few amounts of goods. So the natural outcome is basically inflation. Inflation. What do you mean by inflation? Here we have given the definition for inflation. Does anyone want to take a guess or try? What is inflation? That's the continuous increase in general price level over a period of time. Inflation happens not only, one or two periods. If prices are continuing to increase, that is inflation. And also we are only talking or not only talking about one or two goods. We are not talking about a bottle or a pen or a computer, not individual items. We are talking about the general price level in the economy. General price level means the average or the representation of all the price levels in the economy. So if you see this general price level, which means the aggregate or the average price level is increasing over the time, you can call it inflation. Now, how do you measure it? How do you measure the general price level? Using which indicator? Any answer? How do you measure the general price level? Increase in general price level. Are you there? Any idea? How do you measure general price level? Can you hear me at least? Hello? I hope you can hear me. Hello? Okay, I see some answers. How do you measure inflation? Someone has given an answer, money multiplier. No, you can't use money multiplier. Money multiplier is basically the monetary expansion. Okay, I get an answer right now, Sandeepani. Consumer price index. Correct, Sandeepani. So we can use consumer price index or a price index precisely to measure inflation. So there are different price indices in the economy, price indicators. There are producer prices, there are consumer prices, there are overall, or you call it GDP based calculators or indicators. There are different indicators. But the most common, the straightforward method is using a consumer price index, CPI. Now in Sri Lanka also, we use CPI. There are different versions of CPI in Sri Lanka. We have basically two types of CPIs in Sri Lanka. One is Colombo Consumer Price Index, CCPI. The other one is National Consumer Price Index. CCPI means Colombo Area Inflation. It's a representation. National CPI means the island-wide CPI. It's a kind of a national indicator. So using this consumer price index, you can measure price changes over the period. So that price change from T1 to T2 is simply the change in price or inflation. Okay, so that change even can be negative. Most of the cases, the change is positive. Positive means you have increase in the prices. So which means you are having inflation. So I think it's clear, when you put more money, the rate of increase in price level will increase because of limited supply of goods and services. So as a result, we don't want to have more money in the system. We don't want to have excessive money in the economy because it creates inflation. So what is the problem with inflation? Why you are worried about inflation? Any response on that? You want to provide a response to me? Why inflation is bad? If you don't want to talk, you can use the chat. Let me know your views. Why we are worried about inflation? Prices increase, okay. Yeah, why it is not good? Prices increasing, correct. Why it is not good? What is the problem when correct? Very precise answer. It affects price stability. Price stability. Why it is bad? Price stability is bad. When price stability is affected, why it is bad? I see another answer. Low consumption. What does that mean? Which means your ability to consumption will be reduced with inflation. So I can give you a very straightforward answer. Inflation is bad, or we don't like inflation because it erodes the value of money. Inflation erodes the value of money. So when inflation is there, the value of money today will not be the same tomorrow. So let's say you have 100 rupees today, that 100 rupees having a certain value, which means you can use that money, 100 rupee, to buy goods and services. That is basically your purchasing power. So purchasing power is today, let's say with the 100 rupees, it's there you have a certain fixed purchasing power. Now let's assume by tomorrow the prices would double, inflation will double. So what will happen? Your purchasing power will be reduced twice, because you are only having a fixed amount of money with you. So when you have fixed income or fixed amount of money, as a result of price increases, your value of money will be reduced. So we can call it economically, inflation is reducing economic welfare. Welfare means how much people are satisfied in the economy using goods and services, right? So when they can't buy their required goods and services using money, that will affect their welfare. That will affect their welfare. Welfare means how good they live, right? So if inflation is there, your welfare will be reduced by tomorrow. Take an example. Now, let's say you have 100 rupees today, fixed income. You want to buy a lunch packet today. So you buy. I don't know whether you have lunch packets at 100. Let's say you buy today. 100 rupees equal one lunch packet. Tomorrow, still you have another 100, but prices go now. Let's say it's now 200. Now, when you have 200 prices tomorrow, lunch packet equals 200. Now you are not able to buy that lunch packet. You can only buy half if they are selling, right? So that's simply erosion of your purchasing power, erosion of your consumption, as someone rightly pointed out. So in that sense, inflation is bad. In any economy, inflation is bad. There are various other explanations also. We will come back to that point when we are talking about central banking to some extent. But right now, let's very clearly conclude that inflation is bad because it affects welfare of the people. It erodes the value of money. So as a result, it erodes consumption. It discourages savings because people won't want to save when high inflation is there. Whenever you save, the value of money gets eroded. So they don't want to save. When inflation is there, people would like to have other things going on, which means they don't want to save. They might be purchasing other assets, real assets, gold and all that. So that creates an additional demand for those assets. So in many aspects, comparing many aspects will give us an understanding to say inflation is adversely affecting the economy. Now here I have provided a couple of examples. If you look at a couple of charts, right? So what are these charts? Now one thing is inflation rate. This is inflation rate in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is one of the countries in the African continent, right? Earlier Rhodesia, right? Zimbabwe, we know Zimbabwe because they have a cricket team, right? Zimbabwe is famous in Sri Lanka. But for economies, Zimbabwe is famous because of high inflation. What is their inflation rate? You call it not inflation, hyperinflation. Hyperinflation. Hyper means it's basically expanding, galloping, right? So it's basically boosting inflation. A day by day, it's expanding. So high, increasing prices. Now, I have a chart here in around 2008-9 period. Inflation in Zimbabwe went up to, if you look at this chart, I don't know whether you are able to read that, axis of this chart. So if you start here, this is 1%, 10%, 100%, 1000%, 10,000%, 100,000%, 1,000,000%, right? 10 million%, 100 million%, 1,000 million%, likewise. So here, on the axis, the number you read as, I think, trillions. So this chart says by 2009-08, this line, inflation went to trillion%. Can you imagine? Can you imagine the rate of speed of price increases? So at one point at the peak, daily inflation rate is 98%, which means on a daily basis, prices are doubling. So you have a certain price in the morning, you have another price in the afternoon. So this is not magic, or this is not, a kind of a story or tale. This is reality. This has happened in Zimbabwe. Prices went up extremely high. Even you can't imagine the rate of increase of these prices. And as a result, what has happened? The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, which means their central bank, they had to print, they have dollars. They have to print dollars with a denomination of $100 trillion. So this note is $100 trillion. You know the purchasing power of this note. You want to have a bundle of these notes to buy a loaf of bread. Can you imagine the erosion of purchasing power? So in Zimbabwe during this period, there are people we call them as starving billionaires. Starving billionaires. Why? They have billions of money, trillions of money, but starving means they cannot afford. Their purchasing power is extremely low. So what is the root cause behind this? The root cause is nothing else, excessive expansion in money. So if you happily expand the money supply, let's say you want to have every day you increase the money supply by, let's say 50%, 100%, you will happily have inflation also, right? So that is the clear message of this uh, chart. This picture is from, again, from a current example. Right now, there is high inflation in Venezuela. Venezuela, one of the famous countries in the world because of many reasons. One reason they have oil resources, and one reason they are basically, kind of a leftist country, which means they are against of, capitalist economic policies. And of course, the other thing is Venezuela, they have beautiful women. Every year you see Miss World, Mrs. World from Venezuela. But keep that aside. Look at the sadness of their story. On the roads, you see Venezuelan currency. I think their currency is bolero. If I'm not mistaken, something like bolero. So their currency is on the roads. Why? People have thrown these currencies to the road because it has no value. Why there is no value? There is high inflation. More than 1000%, 2000% inflation is there. So when inflation is there, the value of money becomes nothing. So this chart tells us when inflation increases, how the purchasing power will decline. So in this chart, at 4% inflation, your value of $1,000 note at 4% inflation, as time goes, it will decline like this, right? So in 25 years time, at 4% inflation, this will become to 368 roughly, right? If inflation is 4%, in 25 years, 1000 today will be equal to 368. If inflation is 6%, $1,000 note today in 25 years will be equal to $200. So as long as inflation is increasing, your purchasing power is basically reducing. That happens over the time. That's why maybe your grandparents say 50 years back, when they have 10 rupees, they could do a lot of things, buy goods and services, go to a cinema, go on shopping, go on a trip, picnic, whatever. You can do a lot of things. But right now, if you have 10 rupees, you can do a limited transactions right now. So which means over the time, prices have eroded. The question is how fast that money is eroding. That is the problem. Now to understand this, we can put this into a framework. I think this framework we have already covered. If you remember, if you recall, we talk about this quantity theory of money sometimes back. Under Fisher equation, remember, we established a relationship between money and the transactions of the economy. I hope you remember this equation. MV equals PY. M means money, V means velocity, P means prices, Y or T means basically output. Right? So this equation simply suggests us the relationship between money and inflation. The relationship between money and inflation. How can you understand the relationship between money and inflation? So on this side we have MV, this side we have PT. We made an assumption that day. What are the assumptions? We basically assume this V is constant And also we assume this T or Y is constant. So in that sense, any increase in M is proportional to P. Any increase in V is basically, any increase in M is proportional to P, which means if money doubles, prices will double. Why it happens? With the constant velocity. So as long as velocity is constant or money is circulating at a constant speed, if you expand the money supply, that will reflect in prices. So that we have established using this quantity theory of money. Now here you see a chart. This chart is actually actual data. What do we have in this chart? So in this chart you will see these kind of charts, we call them as scatter plots. Scatter plot means you have two variables, you have observations, and you put you plot it on a scatter diagram. So when you plot the scatter diagram for money supply growth, here on this axis we have money supply change, and this axis CPI change, which means inflation. So here the dots, different dots, blue color, green color, there are various dots. All these dots are basically for countries. Sri Lanka, India, USA, likewise, you plot the countries' inflation and money growth. So what you will see, all these dots are in different places, but if you take a trend line, this red line, you call it a trend line, that trend line indicates a positive direction. The trend line is having a positive slope, which means there is a positive relationship between the CPI change and money supply change. So as long as money supply is increasing, that is reflected in change in CPI. So even from actual data, you call them as empirical data, actual data, that confirms inflation is driven by money. Inflation is driven by money. To make it very precise, in economics, you can call it demand-driven inflation is caused by money. Supply side inflation, there could be various factors. Drought, floods, all these are supply related matters. For that matter also, prices could go up. But if you look at from the demand perspective, the main cause for increase in prices is increase in money. Okay. Here I have given you some numbers also to get some understanding. Let's say the overall stock of money is 1000, velocity is 2, so output is 100. What is the price level? So to calculate it, if you have a question like this in the exam, you use the Fisher equation. So Fisher equation, I hope you can see the board. MV equals PY. So if you want to calculate the P, which means MP divided by Y. Sorry. Yes. MV divided by Y. So in this case, we have numbers given. Based on that numbers, you can calculate the initial price. Here, we calculate initial price. So M is given 1000. V is given 2, which means 2000. Divided by 100 means the price equals 20. So in this case, let's say money supply increases to 2000, which means money supply doubles. What will happen to the prices? Even without calculating, you can say the price 20 should double, which means the new price will be 40. that you can calculate using the equation also. MV divided by Y. M is 2000, V is 2, which means 4000 divided by 140, right? So these are some examples that you can understand this monetary expansion and its impact on prices. If you look at some past papers, you will see some similar questions. Not very recently, but I remember in some of the papers you have similar questions in terms of monetary expansion and its impact on basically on prices. Okay. Right. Let's move on. So by now we have seen, based on theory, based on actual data, based on some number crunching, we have seen if money gets doubled, inflation should be doubling. Or if money gets increased, inflation should increase, right? So that is basically the understanding that we got. So inflation is basically coming out of money. Now, inflation is related to price stability. I remember someone gave an answer. I asked why inflation is bad. Someone gave an answer. It affects price stability. Correct. Why? Inflation is increases in prices. Price stability means the relative price stability in the economy for a period of time. That is also measured by inflation. Now, if you look at this chart, in this chart, I have given you inflation rate. So this blue line is basically inflation. So during the period 1965 to around 1990s, in this country, inflation is basically volatile. It's going up, going down, going up, and also it's high. So high and volatile inflation means prices are unstable. So you can call in this part of this chart, prices are basically unstable. In other words, no price stability during this period because inflation is high and volatile. Look at this period after 1995 to modern period to the current period. Inflation is basically low. The maximum is around 5%. Now inflation is low, and also look at the volatility. It does not move a lot, right? It's only moving in a certain band. So during this period, prices are stable. So this period you have price stability, this period you have price instability. So price stability is important because, as we have already seen, it's affecting economic welfare, economic growth of the country. So we consider price stability as a precondition for economic welfare. Economic performance is basically driven by price stability. Now, when price stability is there, we can basically predict the economy. If you look at this second chart, in this period, when price stability is there, which means prices are moving at a slow pace, you can predict the behavior of the price. If you see price stability in terms of, let's say, 2%, every year you see 2%, 2 to 3% inflation. every year. You have seen this for many last years. Let's say last 5 years, you have seen prices are stable. So as a result, you can predict the next period price also. You know, unless something has happened drastically, like a corona right now we have, under normal circumstances, prices should behave the past trend, right? So it's basically predictable. When prices are volatile, this dark part, you see the prices are going up and also it's high, you cannot predict. So volatile prices are unpredictable. You can't make a decision. You can't make a judgment about the future. So predictability is important for economic agents because you can make economic decisions based on the predictable future, So that's why it's important. Now, how do you ensure this price stability? That is the question. We know inflation is coming out of money. When inflation is there, price stability could be affected. If we are to achieve price stability, what should be the way? How do you achieve price stability? That is the question. That is the focus of this discussion also. How do you do it? You basically use a policy called monetary policy. Monetary policy. Very simply, monetary policy is all about money. We already mentioned the related policy for money is basically monetary policy. So you use it for price stability, to achieve price stability. So in the following slides, let's see how a country uses monetary policy to achieve price stability. So that is our next few slides will be based upon this discussion. Let me check whether we can relate some exam question at this point. I'm looking at very recent papers. There are some questions, probably we move forward and then try to answer, because some of the questions I think we are yet to discuss. The related discussion is due. We'll do that. So monetary policy, we already understand what is monetary policy and why we use monetary policy. Very simple purpose is to achieve price stability, which means to control inflation, in other words. Now let's look at monetary policy in a detailed manner. What is meant by monetary policy and how we use this policy for our processes. So monetary policy, it's a kind of a process. What is this process? Where the central bank is trying to influence the cost and availability of money. We mentioned at the beginning, monetary policy is all about money. What aspects of money? Which aspects? Monetary policy talks about the cost and availability of money. Cost means basically the interest rate, right? Cost means basically the interest rate. Availability means basically the money supply, liquidity. Liquidity we already know, right? Liquidity means the available money in the system. So through monetary policy, we are trying to influence these cost and the interest rate. Actually, you can write it interest rate here. So we are trying to achieve or affect the interest rate and money supply through monetary policy. So whenever you implement the monetary policy, you are trying to control the level of money, which means liquidity, and the price of money in the economy. In other words, we are trying to control money supply and interest rates. Now, the central bank is doing this as a process. I told you the central bank, if you look at this part, it's basically we have highlighted the process. So what is the process there we highlight? The central bank is having some final goals. They are having some final targets with them. What is the final target? They want to control inflation. They want to support economic growth. So that is their goal variable, final target. How do they achieve it? For that matter, they have different tools. Central bank is given different tools by the authorities for them to use. So whenever they use these tools, they are trying to achieve these final goal variables. Now, the speciality of central banking is you cannot use these tools directly to affect the inflation. So even though it has number of tools here as mentioned in this slide, they can't use it directly to have an impact on inflation. For that matter, they follow a process, as I say. So in this process, they are trying to achieve some intermediate or some operational variables in between. For example, the central bank can focus on reserve money when they want to achieve inflation target. So if you control reserve money, ultimately you achieve inflation. So that is one way. Or central bank can control interest rates directly with a view to control inflation at the end. So likewise, they can use different instruments or different targets to achieve their final goal value. It's like we are running a 100-meter race. How do you achieve that? You know the 100 meters there is a goal to achieve. So what is the tool to achieve it? You have to run, right? You have to run. That is your instrument. When you are running, how do you run? You have some other targets also, other supporting instruments also. So in between there could be different targets that you want to achieve. 400 meters, you want to achieve 50 meters, 75 meters, likewise. So when you are running, you have different aid, like you have, shoes, spikes and water, energy drink or whatever, right? You have different other ingredients also. So monetary policy is also like that. You can't achieve this final goal without the support of these tools, instruments, and other targets. So that's why I call it a monetary policy is a process. Now at this level, now what will happen at the next level when you go to DBF, under central banking, you will be studying, you will be focusing on this thoroughly because you have a different single subject for central banking. There you will study these concepts in a detailed manner. What are the tools? What are the targets? What are the supporting ingredients? Likewise, you will discuss in a detailed manner at the next level. So at this level, we are limiting our discussion mainly for monetary policy instruments. We are only worried about monetary policy instruments. So this part. What are the instruments? Instrument means, as I said, to go into this final variable of inflation or to achieve that final goal post, you have to have some ingredients, tools, right? Oh, Mevala, tools, a very popular word now these days. So these are the tools that the central bank can use to achieve that final goal. So let's talk about these tools in the next slides in a detailed manner. Okay. Okay, up to this point, do you have any question to raise? If you want to raise any question, please ask, or even you can send me a message here. Write down your question here. Is anyone having any question? All clear? Great. How about others? Everyone? Can we move to the next part of the discussion? Okay, let's move. Now, in the next part, as I said, we will look at these instruments in a detailed manner because we need to understand these instruments. In your paper, the questions are based on mostly on these instruments. Monetary policy questions are mostly on the instruments. So this is the first set of instruments, policy interest rates. These policy interest rates, we call them as central bank interest rates. Now we know in the market there are interest rates, no? In the commercial banks, in the money market, in the government securities market, there are various interest rates. So these interest rates are not those interest rates. These are policy interest rates, means they are basically owned by the central bank. Central bank is the authority to change these rates, policy rates. That's why you call it policy rates. Sometimes you use the word repo rates, discount rate, discount rates. In all terminology, you use those words. Repo rate, reverse repo rate, likewise discount rate, rediscount rate. Everything indicates the same, the policy interest rate. So they are basically the central bank interest rate. Why policy interest rate is a policy instrument? Because the central bank can signal their monetary policy stance through these policy interest rates. The central bank can signal. Now, normally, central banks are giving signals to the market. Rather than taking crude actions, central banks are, in the first place, they are giving some signals to the market. Now, let's say the central bank, let's say it wants to have high interest rates in the economy, it gives a signal. How it gives a signal? It can do it, the central bank can do it directly also. Central bank can say, all commercial banks, okay, you have to increase your rates. They can do it by law. But rather than doing it, the central banks are, at first hand, they are basically giving a signal. They give a signal about their policy. If they want to interest rates to go up, they can indicate it by changing these policy rates. So the central bank increase or decrease policy rates and give a signal to the market on what should be their rate direction, whether their rate should also go up, whether they should go down, is basically hinted by the central bank, signaled by the central bank by changing their policy rates. Now let's say under current conditions, right now, we know there are a lot of issues going on in the economy. Central bank wants to have lower interest rates. interest rates to come down. Now, what can the central bank do? The central bank can do it by changing their policy interest rates. Central bank can reduce their policy interest rates and give a signal to the market, okay, we have reduced our rates, so you should also reduce your rates in line with that. So that signal is basically coming from the central bank. So that's how the policy interest rates work. But what are these rates actually? If you want to give a definition for these policy rates, these are the rates that the central bank is absorbing or providing liquidity to the financial system. Absorbing or providing liquidity means the central bank's role is to basically provide enough money to the economy to operate on a daily basis, monthly basis, weekly basis. The central bank is monitoring and put liquidity to the system. So these days also the central bank's task is to provide liquidity to the market. Probably some of you may have seen the central bank very recently published a list of measures taken by the central bank during this COVID period. So in that list of measures, if you look at this list, most of the actions done by the central bank during last 3-4 months is to provide liquidity to the market, provide money to the market. So that money is needed to economy to operate. That money is needed during the hard time of the people. That money is needed for businesses to start. So likewise, the liquidity is injected by the central bank during that period. What is the other side of opposite side? If the central bank thinks, okay, there shouldn't be that amount of money in the economy, there shouldn't be large amounts of money in the economy, the central bank can absorb money. The central bank can, the central bank can absorb money if they what has happened to this cursor? I don't know, I can't. Right. Central bank can absorb if there is more money. So what I want to tell you, the policy rates of the central banks are the rates that the central bank is injecting money to the economy or absorbing money to the economy. So in many countries, these policy rates are working as a corridor. I'll show you on the whiteboard. In many countries, it is basically working as a corridor. So some countries, they have only one policy rate. Let's say, let's take a country like ECB, European Central Bank, they are only having one rate likewise. So this rate, if they increase, that indicates the interest rate should go up. If it is flat, interest rate should be unchanged. If it is reduced, that indicates rate should go down. So that is one way of basically having a policy rate. And based on these rates, the central bank can absorb or inject liquidity depending on the need. But the common case is countries are having interest rates as a corridor. So there are two rates, lower rate and a higher rate. So if the central bank wants to signal an increase in the interest rates, they can increase this rate and the corridor will shift upwards. Right? So the corridor will shift upwards if there is a policy rate increase, if the central bank wants to increase interest rate. Let's say the central bank wants to bring down interest rates, then they can bring down the corridor again likewise. So which means they signal a reduction in interest rates. So when there is a corridor, by shifting the corridor up, you can indicate an increase in the interest rate. If the corridor is shifted down, that indicates a reduction in interest rates. So that is basically the monetary policy stance. So if interest rates are going up, you can call it a tight monetary policy stance when interest rates are going up. When interest rates are going down, you can call it relaxed monetary policy stance. Right? So why the central bank is tightening or relaxing these rates? Why is that? Central bank wants to control the economy's money level and as a result inflation. Remember, our main task is to look at inflation and control inflation. For that matter, you can basically change the money supply and interest rates in the economy. So that is how these rates are used. But what I was telling earlier, what are these two rates? These two rates are having a lower rate and a higher rate. So the lower rate is basically where you absorb liquidity. Absorb means when the market is having more money, they can come to the central bank and deposit at this rate. So the lower rate is a deposit rate. Okay. So on the opposite side, the above rate, this one is a injection rate used for injection, which means if there is no money in the economy, market players, banks can come and borrow from the central bank at this rate, injection. So usually central bank takes deposit at a lower rate, give loans at a higher rate. So this is the rate for injection, this is the rate for absorption. As I said, by moving these two rates, the central bank can indicate its policy direction. Clear? You have to be very clear on this. Is everyone clear? All good? Right. Now, in this slide, I have already put an example how these policy changes of the central bank will affect the economy. Now, in this example, let's say the central bank is increasing interest rates. Now, we know why the central bank is increasing interest rate. What could be the reason? The central bank observes there are inflationary pressures in the economy. Where there are more money, people are demanding more, inflation rate is going up. Earlier 5%, now 6%, 7%, 8%. The central bank is observing that inflation rate is going up. So when inflation rate is going up, the central bank wants to bring down inflation by changing its policy interest rates. So as I said, in order to bring down inflation, you have to increase the interest rate. So they are moving in different directions or opposite directions. Higher the interest rates, lower the inflation. Lower the interest rates, higher the inflation. So you can imagine the action here taken by the central bank. The policy rates have been increased. Why is that? They want to bring down inflation. That's why. So how it happens? It happens mainly through increase in market interest rates. So when market interest rates go up through the policy rate increases, the demand for credit will go down. People will now not borrow from the banks, isn't it? Earlier you were borrowing, let's say 6%. Now you are paying 7%. The people, they don't want to borrow. Demand for credit goes up, goes down. Supply for funds can go up, which means people might start saving when the interest rates go up. Ultimately, I have not presented that part. If you take this transmission to the end, you will see inflation is basically responding. Inflation is coming down due to this policy rate increase. So there is one type of instruments used by the central bank. Recently, during coronavirus period, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka has reduced this rate quite a number of times to support the economy, to give some boost for credit. Right? You all know in the economy, most of the interest rates right now very low. Under these different facilities, people can borrow at 4% from the banks due to the impact of this virus pandemic. So as a result, the demand for credit is increasing since rates are low. So there is one way of controlling the economy by the central bank using the policy rate. Second main instrument is open market operations. Policy rates, open market operations. Most of the time we discuss these two things together, policy rates and open market operations, because they operate together actually. But for our understanding, we'll take it as a separate instrument here, open market operations. What do you mean by open market operations? The central bank is buying and selling securities in the open market to affect money supply in the economy, to affect liquidity in the economy. Buying and selling securities in the open market means simply the banking system. That doesn't mean open market is basically, a market like, money market or peta market, right? So it's not a place like that. It's the banking system. The open market is banking system. So there the central bank buys and sells securities. Securities means central bank can buy government securities or central bank can sell government securities. Whenever the central bank buys or sells these securities, what will happen? That will change the money supply of the economy, the level of money in the economy. So I'll draw a simple example here. On your slide, you also have a diagram here, but I'll make it very simple. Let's say in the economy, there is more money, excess money in the system. So we know when excess money is there, that can drive inflation. So one way of managing that, the central bank can increase interest rates, as we have already seen. Right? The other way is the central bank can do open market operations. What is open market operations? Buying and selling securities. So when there is more money, let's say in the economy, this amount of money is there. Central bank wants to reduce this. Central bank wants to reduce this. How it can reduce it? It can basically buy this money to the central bank. Right? Central bank buy this money is in the banking system. They can buy or they can ask them to deposit money with the central bank, and for that matter they give securities. They are giving money, the central bank is giving securities. Right? This is basically exchanging securities for money. I think you may have heard the term, this repo, reverse repo words, right? So this thing, you can call it as a repo transaction from central bank's point of view. You are basically entering into a repo transaction while you are getting money and giving securities. Right? So this is basically absorbing liquidity. Right? Absorbing liquidity. Clear? Now let's say the central bank wants to inject money into the system. So when the central bank wants to inject money into the system, it can do the reverse of this operation. So what is the reverse? They want to increase money. To increase money, the central bank should inject money to the system. So when central bank is injecting money to the system, they get securities from the banking system. You call it injection of money, or you can call it reverse repo transaction. Central bank is entering into a reverse repo transaction by purchasing securities and giving money. Okay. So on this slide, what we have in this diagram is the same. So if you look at the diagram, here I'm on the diagram now. Now let's start with the right hand side of the chart diagram. I told you, let's say the central bank want to control inflation. Why it needs to control inflation? There's more money in the economy. So they want to reduce money. What does the central bank do? To reduce money, the central bank will send their bonds or securities and buy money from the banks. Central bank is giving bonds, buying money from banks, which means lowering the money supply. So when the central bank is lowering money supply, interest rates are going up, individuals and companies are affected, their demand is going down, then the inflation is coming down in a very rude way, right? Rude way. Similarly, the central bank wants to, control the recession. Let's say the central bank wants to inject money. What does the central bank do? The central bank injects money, dollars, by buying bonds from the banks. As a result, money supply will go up, interest rates will go down, individuals and companies will be flooded with money, so they will start transactions and economic activities will happen. Now, in our economy right now, exactly what we are performing now is exactly this highlighted part. Why? Now we are worried about a recession. We think the economic activities are affected due to the corona. So we want to give some boost to the economy. What is the boost given by the central bank? The central bank is injecting money through buying bonds. Bonds means government securities from the banks and the government, and injecting money and lowering the interest rate. So this mechanism, you call it open market operations performed by the central bank. Central bank is performing open market operations through buying securities to inject money and by selling securities to absorb money. Either way. Okay. Clear? Any question on that? In short, we call them as OMOs. OMOs, open market operations. If you see the term OMO, that means open market operations, which means buying and selling securities by the central bank from the with the banking system. Okay, so those are some key instruments of the central bank. Third instrument or the tool, reserve requirements. I think I don't need to spend too much of time on this. We already covered this in our money discussion. Reserve requirement means the banks are required to keep a certain percentage of their deposits with the central bank, and it affects the money supply through multiplier. Remember SRR, if you raise SRR, money supply will go down through the multiplier. When you raise SRR, money multiplier will go down. If you reduce SRR, money multiplier will go up, money supply will also go up. So through the control of reserve ratio, you can change the level of money in the economy. And indirectly interest rates also. Why? When you raise SRR, if money supply goes down, means interest rates will increase. The cost of funds will go up. The opposite is the same. If you reduce SRR, money supply will increase, the interest rates will go down. So we have done this thing also during the pandemic period. The reserve ratio has been brought down to very low levels. I'll come back to that point at the end of the session. We have some slides on that, but we have used this. And there are other instruments used by the central banks. In this slide, I have put the other instruments in two identical colors. In the first part, I have put 4 instruments which are traditional other instruments, which means the central bank can ask to maintain a special deposit with the central bank. I hope you have you may have heard the word margin requirements. Margin. Central banks are imposing margin requirements on commercial banks, which means, let's say if you import a certain good from another country, usually you import using foreign exchange, isn't it? You open an LC and you import. Once the your good is received, you pay, you settle and pay. Likewise, pay and settle. But if the central bank is putting a margin, what does that mean? If you want to import, a corresponding domestic currency should be deposited in your account. Let's say you are importing a vehicle of 10 million. The 10 million equivalent money in rupees should be kept in the central bank, in the commercial bank. You call them as special deposits, which means to control the money creation or to reduce the pressure on the exchange rate. Moral suasion, the second one. Moral suasion means the central bank is having a dialogue with the market, with the banks, on their activities. The central bank is telling to the market, okay, you have to behave in a good manner. You have to reduce your interest rates, or you have to reduce your high loans right now. Likewise, the central bank can take some approach, some diplomatic approach. You call it in Sinhala Shishta Prayoga, Shishta, which means you tell them in a good manner, moral suasion. Direct controls, the central bank can directly control the activities of the banks. Central bank can say, okay, your interest rate should be this. Now, last year, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka imposed interest rate caps. For pawning, right now, there is a cap interest rate, 12%. For, I think, credit cards, the central bank can put a cap. For other interest rates, central bank can put a cap, which means directly controlling. Or they can say, okay, credit growth should be limited to this amount. Likewise, the central bank can put or impose direct controls on the banks or financial institutions. Foreign exchange transactions also is a part of monetary policy instrument. Why? The central bank can change the money supply in the economy by buying and selling foreign exchange. Remember, we talked about foreign assets last week, foreign asset liabilities. We saw when the foreign assets and liabilities are changing, the money quantum is changing. So if the central bank wants to reduce money supply, probably they can, sell foreign exchange or other way around. So that is also an instrument that can be used by central banks. So these are the first four. And the last two, I have put it in different color. The first one is macroprudential tools. What do you mean by macroprudential tools? These are the tools used by the central banks to address systemic risk on the financial system. Why they need to control systemic risk on the financial system? Because it has both monetary and financial implications. Now, very good example is, let's say there is a boom in the housing market. What is the problem? When there is a boom in the housing market, that is a monetary policy problem, right? That creates some imbalance in the economy. Price instability pressures on that in that housing market. Likewise, that is also a financial problem. Why? When housing market is booming, when there is an excessive growth, that market could collapse, making financial institutions, these companies into trouble, putting into trouble. So as a result, the central bank wants to control this market, this sector, by imposing a macroprudential tool. Macroprudential tool, which means a policy that is used to strengthen the financial system and to manage the shocks in the financial system. So one good example for these macroprudential tools is loan to value ratio. Loan to value ratio. If you are a banker, you know these terms. Loan to value ratio means in a bank, if you ask for a loan, let's say you want to buy a vehicle, let's say again 10 million vehicle. You ask for a loan from the bank. Can I have the 10 million as a loan? Usually the banks will not give the 10 million value. They will give a reduced value, right? Normally 90% is given by the bank. If you want to have 10 million, they will only give 9 million. Loan to value ratio means that 9 million, the ratio as the total value, which means 90%. Now the central bank can change this rate to further bring down the loan to value ratio. Let's say the central bank is telling to banks, okay, you cannot give 9 million to this person. You can only give 5 million. So out of 10 million need, you only get 5 million, which means 50%. Loan to value is 50%. So by changing this loan to value ratio, the central bank can give a kind of a control to that particular market. So that is called macro-prudential tools. There are many more tools, but most popular ones are the loan to value, and there's one called debt to income ratio. You cannot borrow more than your income. Likewise, there are ratios. That is one set of new tools that we are talking about. And also there's an other set of new tools which is very important for modern days, unconventional monetary policies. Now, what I discuss up to now, these interest rates, open market operations, statutory ratios, and all these measures, they are considered as traditional, conventional monetary policy measures. Traditional or conventional monetary policy measures. Unconventional means during unconventional periods or during extraordinary periods, central banks are using different policy measures to stimulate the economy. For example, during 2008-9 crisis, the central bank used unconventional monetary policies, extraordinary period. Even now, we have an extraordinary period. The central banks are using unconventional policies right now because you need to do extraordinary activities. You need to have extraordinary policies to address extraordinary situation. What are these unconventional policies? Here I have listed out few, so you can write the terms are there, but you can get down some definition from me. I'm going to give you a definition for these unconventional policies. Ready? I hope you have a pen and paper with you, right? So these terms I have not defined in the slide, so probably it's important you take a note on that. So the first measure I have mentioned here is quantitative easing. Quantitative easing. I think I have already covered this quantitative easing one day in our monetary money discussion. Basically, what we are talking about is central bank is buying government securities to expand money supply. Central bank is buying government securities to expand the money supply. That is basically quantitative easing. For example, central banks are buying government treasury bills, bonds, other instruments or whatever. When the central bank is buying that, the flow of money is released to the economy through the central bank actions. Quantitative easing, buying government securities by the central bank. And also the other one, credit easing, which means central banks are buying private debt securities to inject liquidity. Central banks are buying private debt securities to inject money. Okay. Quantitative easing means buying government securities. Credit easing means basically buying private securities. What are the private securities? Let's see whether you have some common understanding or you have general knowledge. What are the private debt securities? Can anyone give me an example for a private debt security? Government security, it's clear, treasury bill or bond, something like that you can buy from the government. Private debt securities under credit easing, any idea? Any example? Can anyone provide an example for a private debt security that the central bank can buy? Now, even now it's happening. It's happening in advanced countries. Central banks are buying these instruments. Your answer is correct, Sandeepani. Are there any more answers? Commercial papers, one of the important private debt securities purchased by the central banks right now to inject liquidity. When the central bank buys these, the central bank injects money. Any other answer? Loan stocks. Okay, that is also possible during such periods. There's another instrument, very common instrument. Commercial papers, loan stocks, and what else? Corporate bonds. Vimandi, correct. Taxation, right? Loan stocks. That answer is okay. Vimandi's answer is also right. Corporate bonds, which means debentures, isn't it? Debentures. So buying debentures by the central bank in Sri Lanka, we don't do it right now. But in a worst case scenario, that is also a possibility for the central bank to purchase. If they are very high rated instruments, the central bank can buy those instruments from the market to inject liquidity. In advanced countries, it's happening. So these are unconventional policies. Negative interest rates. Negative interest rates means the central bank purposely brings interest rate down to zero, or mostly not even zero, negative levels. Negative interest rate means, what do you mean by negative? Usually, whenever we say interest rate, it's positive value, isn't it? When you deposit, you get a positive interest rate for your deposit. If you borrow, you pay interest on that. But negative interest rate means what? If it is borrowing, negative means you get an advantage. If it is depositing, negative means you don't get anything, but instead you have to pay. For example, if you have a negative deposit rate, for keeping money at the bank, you have to pay to the bank. So during the crisis period, the central banks are doing this thing. They are not paying any positive interest rate on the deposits of commercial banks with the central bank. If central bank wants to deposit money at the central bank, that is at a negative rate. Why? They want to encourage commercial banks to go to the markets and lend without coming to the central bank to deposit. Some banks right now, they are doing it, negative rates. For example, European Central Bank right now, they have negative rates. Japan Central Bank, they have negative rates. Switzerland, Swiss National Bank, they have negative rates, which means all of them are not paying interest, but they are charging interest from the commercial banks whenever they want to deposit. So these are unconventional policies. There's one more which I have not listed here. I will write it here for you. Yes, someone has said actually Sweden. I think it should be basically Switzerland, if I am not mistaken. If I am not mistaken, Switzerland is having negative interest rates. I'm not so sure about Sweden, I'll check. But definitely Switzerland is having negative rates. The other instrument is basically, I'll type it for you here. Forward guidance. Forward guidance. That is also one of the instruments used by a central bank. What do you mean by forward guidance? Now, normally, the central bank will not tell you what would be the interest rate for the next year. Normally, they don't tell. Have you ever seen the central bank is saying, okay, let's say in Sri Lanka, now our interest rate, let's say 4%, 5%, say the central bank rate. Have you ever seen that central bank is saying, okay, this year our rate is 5%, for the next year it is 4%, another year it's 4%. Have you seen that? No. Normally, the central bank does not announce its interest path. It's depending on the situation. Time to time they change. But under exceptional circumstances, the central bank can use this policy forward guidance to say the path of the interest rate. In that case, the central bank will tell you, okay, this year we are maintaining interest rate as this level. Next year we will have interest rate around this level. Likewise, they give a guidance to the market. They give a path or some certainty of the interest rates to the market. Because then the market participants, banks, they will undertake some activities and they take positions without any uncertainty. Why central bank is giving this forward guidance? Then they know at least for some period interest rate will be at these levels. Okay, so you call it forward guidance. So under normal circumstances, as I said, these are the instruments: policy rates, OMOs, reserve ratios, and special deposits, moral suasion likewise. Under extraordinary periods, special circumstances, central banks use unconventional monetary policies, which means quantitative easing, credit easing, negative interest rate, forward guidance. And also, modern central banks, they use macro-prudential policies to address the monetary and financial sector issues together. Any imbalance in financial or monetary sector can be addressed using these macro-prudential tools. All these tools are, discussed in an extensive manner in your next level, but at this point, you should have some basic understanding about these policy instruments. So that's why I mentioned to you. Now I told you the central banks are taking policy directions, policy path, or you call it monetary policy stance, which means in terms of monetary policy, what do you think now? What is your policy right now? Something like that. So as a rule of thumb, whenever a central bank is making policy decisions, they basically adhere to, or they basically look at some variables. We already know inflation is one of the key variables looked at by the central bank. So if inflation is high or there is risk of inflation, the rule for the central bank is they should raise interest rates. If inflation is low or if inflation is going to be negative, the rule of thumb is central bank should lower the interest rates. Okay. Similarly, so this is the key variable, inflation. Now, periods like this right now, in our case, let's say in Sri Lanka or all over the world, what is the key issue right now? Inflation or something else? Right now, inflation is not the problem. Periods like this, the central bank's main concern is what? Growth, economic growth. So by looking at economic growth also, the central bank can take policies. For example, if central bank says the growth is excessive, growth is very high, economy is growing at 9%, 10%, 12% every year, you call it overheating. So whenever you see economic overheating, the central bank should raise interest rates. Whenever you see economic growth is too slow or recession, likewise now, you lower the interest rate. So this is the rule of thumb. Under normal monetary policy circumstances, if the central bank sees high inflation, interest rate should be high. If there is low inflation, interest rate should be low. So that determines the monetary policy stance. If high interest rates are there, you call it tight monetary policy. If low interest rates are there, you call it relaxed monetary policy. I think I already mentioned to you tight and relaxed policy. So that you need to have some basic understanding. Now, you are not a central bank, but the way the economy is moving is giving you some idea what should the central bank do. For example, let's say you are observing that economy's inflation is basically picking up, going up. Last month it was 5%, this month it is 8%, another month it is 9%. Likewise, you observe inflation is going up. So as a layman, as a rule of thumb, as a person who's having some central banking knowledge, now you are thinking, okay, in this situation, the central bank should raise interest rates, because to bring down inflation, you have to raise interest rate. Similarly, if you're observing economy is not moving, inflation is low, growth is low, what can the central bank do? They can give a boost to the economy by lowering or relaxing monetary policy. So these are the directions of monetary policy. So here I have summarized this monetary policy direction. If there is a tight policy, you call it contractionary. You observe interest rates are rising, monetary growth is slowing down, decline in demand for aggregate demand is declining, decline in inflation. So that is the outcome of the central bank tight monetary policy. If the central bank is pursuing a relaxed policy, expansionary policy, what you will see as the outcome? You will see interest rates are decreasing, money supply is increasing, high liquidity is there, aggregate demand is picking up, and gradually you will see inflation is also picking up with the relaxed policy. So depending on the tight or relaxed condition, the response of inflation would be changing, would be different. So by targeting those inflation movements, the central bank is taking actions. So here I have given you a question. What is the current monetary policy stance of the central bank? I'm just asking whether it is tight or relaxed or something else. What do you think? What is the current monetary policy stance in Sri Lanka? How about others? Everyone is relaxed, isn't it? Yes. All say it's relaxed. So we have a relaxed monetary policy stance right now. Why do you say relaxed monetary policy stance? If you look at these, different outcomes we have seen, interest rates have come down, money supply has gone up, aggregate demand, we expect now it will pick up because of the relaxed policy, and gradually inflation will also pick up. Okay. Last slide for the day, transmission. Now, whenever what we have already covered, discussed throughout these 2 hours, the central bank action, the central bank is doing this. Central bank is changing the interest rate. Central bank is doing OMO. Central bank is doing SRR changes. All these are central bank activities. Now that action has to be translated to the broader economy. That process, you call it transmission process. Transmission means going from one end to the next end. Now coronavirus transmission means it is spreading from someone to other one. Similarly, monetary transmission means the impact of monetary policy is felt by some point to the next point. Usually you can monitor the transmission process through the changes in interest rates. If the central bank is changing its interest rate, that will affect the entire economy through the transmission process. So if you look at this chart, I have put a simple chart for you to understand. Let's say the central bank is changing its policy rates. Let's say the central bank is increasing policy rates. What will happen to the market rates? Market rate means the bank interest rates, treasury bill rates, treasury bond rates, other market interest rates, likewise any other rate other than the central bank rate, you call them as market rates. All these rates are increasing. Technically, you can call it the changes is reflected in the yield curve. Yield curve we will be discussing next week. Interest rate changes are reflected in the yield curve. Okay, that is basically market rates. So when market rates go up, demand for credit go down, because demand for credit goes down because now the credit is costly. When demand for credit goes down, remember, credit is the most important source of money, which means money supply goes down. In other words, liquidity goes down. So when liquidity goes down, money supply goes down, people now demand less because their purchasing power is less. So when demand goes down, demand pressures going down means inflation is basically going down. So from changing interest rates to inflation, if you look at, there is a process. That process is basically referred to as transmission. So we can simply say monetary policy changes are influencing financial markets. Financial market prices are changing with the monetary policy. Especially bond prices and share prices are changing with the monetary policy changes. Let's say the central bank is changing its interest rates. As a result, bond interest rates are changing and the bond price will also change. When bond prices are changing, that will have an impact on the share prices because all these markets are interconnected. For example, let's say the central bank is increasing interest rates. What will happen? Market rates will go up. So bond interest rates will also then go up. So what we observe, when bond interest rates are going up, people are moving to the bond market. Why? Now bonds are less expensive. You can purchase bonds at lesser prices. So bond prices go down. So as a result, the bond market gets activated. So when bond market gets activated, the share market is affected. Why? Now less activities in the share market, share prices go down. So I think you get some idea, when the central bank is changing monetary policy, that has some transmission effect or trickle down effect on the other financial sector variables. So that's why whenever the central bank is changing its monetary policy, people are waiting to hear that. People are waiting to listen to the announcement, what the central bank is doing, because it has an impact on many market segments. Okay. With that, we conclude today's discussion on monetary policy basics. Now, what I request you to basically to complete the reading of chapter 7. Now, not actually completing. We have completed one section. What did you already covered under in chapter 7? You went through the money part, isn't it? You referred to the money section. Now, today I am giving you another section to read from the chapter 7, monetary policy. Okay? So there is a section in chapter 7 on monetary policy. Now, in that part, the central bank has discussed what the central bank has done in terms of monetary policy last year and also in the current period. So I recommend by next week you read that part and come to the class, because I have some exercises from the past papers, because there are some numbers, some policies in the past papers, and we are going to discuss those past paper questions during our discussion. So I kindly request you to look at these parts in the chapter 7 monetary policy part. So let's stop here, and I'll see you next week. We are in a new month next week, July. So we will see you on July, I guess it's July 4th at the same time. Okay. Have a good weekend, and also don't forget to study, spend some time on readings, and let's move on as we plan. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Good night.